obviously, you want the referee somewhere around here, don't we? Yeah. Somewhere in this, I mean, it might be a bit deeper, a bit flatter, whatever, a bit closer, a bit wider. We've all got our philosophies, but I don't think there's too much of an argument that when the referee blows the whistle, we don't want them standing here too often when they're blowing it. Agree? Yeah. Or we don't want them standing here too often when they're blowing it for a breakdown infringement, because in this case, traffic. In this case, it's a fucking terrible place to ref a counter run. Hey, yeah. So the whole philosophy behind this is how do we navigate from phase to phase while always giving ourselves easy access to the post, which is what I call that area there. So the whole base of it is we always need to be able to have access to that, but we also got to be able to be smooth and in rhythm and comfortable and able to stay out of the way and get there. So it's just it's a balance between those two things, because if we just plant ourselves in the post the whole time, what's going to happen? Where am I? Yeah, I'm going to get caught.
Yeah, traffic.
Pass, so we're right at there, right? If we do what the Australian refs do and we just run from chariot to chariot, it's easy, we stay out of the way, but we ain't seeing what we need to see, right? So, I'm not trying to say this is the only way of doing it or anything like that. All I've done is from my own experience and looking at how some of the top New Zealand refs do it. I sort of sat down and broke down what's everybody kind of doing, and when you look at Beno Keith, Mike Fraser, those guys, probably lesser extent Paul is probably the outlier in that group, just because he's so fit and little, he gets away with bad habits, but he can move so easy. For those of us that are average athletes, we've probably got to figure things out a little bit. Keith's a good athlete, but have things figured, and basically everyone's doing about the same thing. So this is not some, and there's not saying there's one spot you must stand or not. This is a system of how do we arrive, how do we transition, how do we exit, okay? So there's the why bit, I guess, but what we're going to practice today, we'll have some people practicing over here, and then some going over in an alive environment where it's really complicated and there's a lot more going on. And we need to have the coaching group split so that when we're practicing this one, we've got some people watching and providing feedback where required, and if required. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it might be just you've got spot on there. And then same thing over there with those ones. Again, that's a lot more complex, but we want to make them quite challenging, and we'll make it more challenging for the ones that are finding it easier, less challenging for the ones that aren't. But here, the basis of this one really is, we can either do it just individually, but what I'd like to be doing it is working in twos or threes, which, but as an individual, the basis of what we're trying to practice is, we're coming up field, we're going to be running this way obviously, and so we want to see us arriving square. And by square I mean we're arriving in towards the breakdown from the side on, around about where the last feet are. Why that's important is if we're any flatter than that and play goes that way, heaps between, yeah. If I'm deeper than that and play quickly comes at me, I'm in the way. So if play's going across the field, we're probably just coming straight in this way. If it's coming upfield first, so the two lines we're running really is ones we're coming up, and wherever we arrive at, we're coming from. We might be coming from wide or shallow or whatever, or else it's just been playing across the field, and so we're just coming in, and it's a more subtle movement. So coming in roughly square, last feet, that's the first thing. Second one is when we take up our position wherever that is, we're trying to, this is a little bit harder for some, but this is a Chris Pollock theory, and I reckon it's a good one. Gaffer has said for his whole life, get your ass to the goal line. That's the outcome. Chris Pollock said to me, well, what's the body position that helps you do that? It's like, well, inside foot up, isn't it? Because as soon as you put the outside foot up, that's what happens, right? So if we can be practicing, teaching, and it's awkward if you're not used to it, and some of the guys, even the better referees, will really struggle with it. And it's not something I do particularly well either. I just think it's a really good, if you can be getting used to it, so wherever you are, that's where you are. Straight away I'm squarer. And the other thing is, when I go to transition, it's a real easy movement. Hey. Yeah, so whereas if I'm like that, and I go to transition, straight away it's automatically 2 steps to get there, which is less ideal. Or it's an awkward sort of so I think so if they're arriving square, that's one thing to give them feedback on. If they're coming in too flat or too deep, that's a good one. If they're struggling with that piece, it's inside foot up, so promote your foot closest to the ruck, and that's a good one to practice and go through 4 or 5 times and do it. And the other one is, Dave, can I get you to stand up and take up one of these defender positions? Yep. I reckon the trigger to say how flat you need to be is if you can reach out and shake the hand of a defender, you're about right. If you're too far, if you're any further away than that, I'd say you're getting a bit deep, because remember the game these days is played really flat.
Yes.
And if you're any closer than that and you can hug him, you're too close.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's handshake distance, and the reason it's that is because I'm only one step away from the defensive line.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. Makes good sense.
And then when we're playing in Jono, did you see this one the other day? If the pass goes that way, players going that way, all the players are going that way, surely we want to be going the same way, right? And if we're going this way because we're late to move, and the defence is going, and then we've got to turn around and go shit all the way back, and you see this in club rugby heaps, eh? Like this is the bit probably people find hardest. And a lot of the time it's either because they're too deep and they've got to go too far to get there, or they're just watching a bit too long and then they get stuck with it and then it comes in. And you get it wrong. I reckon when I'm going well, I get this right 80 or 90% of racks and I still cock up 10 or 20. So it's trying to get it right most of the time. And what that does, not only gives me a better picture, makes me feel confident. I feel like I'm in rhythm. I place huge emphasis on being in rhythm. I feel like I'm in rhythm. My feet are moving. You know, this is easy. This is economy of movement. It's easy, and all of a sudden I'm confident. I'm not rushed. I've got time, and I see things clearer. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what we'll do is, if somebody's really struggling with the fundamentals of it, and you, as the coach, you'll be working with them on identifying this, then you'll just work with them doing it one-on-one. Just practice, run in, get your setup right. So you're okay. You stand there and say, look, you can't shake my hand. Come forward. You know, or you're too flat now. What happens if the halfback plays that way? So do it without the extra person. If they've got that okay, get them working in pairs or with a three. So you're cueing your movements off. The key for us, we cue off the halfback. So you just judge that with whoever it is you're particularly working. So I want this to be like you're working with one or two refs, or two of you are working with a couple of refs, and we get them going through, and just everybody's got different skill requirements at the moment. But you've got to just judge that and try. Does that make sense? Any questions? I'll be around if you're not sure. Just let me know. But it's just the emphasis on being flat, getting our timing, and being smooth and economical in our movements, which will become really obvious in this one when it's not. 20 days? Yep. Okay. The guys, to lift their intensity, it was far better for the refs. So we want to make sure that we're not just too passive in what we're doing. So the role you guys play in that is, you'll be off to the sideline, is just if you notice somebody's, we want them, we don't want them smashing into the hit shields, but let's get a little bit of intensity and some communication, because as soon as that happens, we hit the hit shields a little bit harder, the defences start setting up a bit more realistic, they're pushing up, and the ref's getting heaps more out of it. It's communication going on, it's realistic. Hey, so that's the first thing. Other than that, it's the same principles as here. We're going to have a pad either side, we'll have 3 or 4 as attackers, so we'll obviously have the 2 pad people and then 3 defenders being the first 3 off the ruck. And then all we'll do is we'll play one side of the channel, bang, ruck, pass to the guy in the middle, who then pass out to the next one, hit the next pad, ruck, and the referee's just going to go side to side, side to side, and then at some stage we'll exit, and they've got to be able to, because this is quite a common pattern of play in club rugby, right? They'll play phase, 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 phase until they draw in some defenders, and then they'll try and play wide. It's congested, it's challenging, it's supposed to be that way. What we need to make sure doesn't happen is the ball doesn't come too quick, unrealistically. That was happening on Wednesday, because it's unopposed. And I'll try and get a couple to specialise on the bags, make sure they're getting that part right, because they can be holding the ball a bit longer and encouraging. The people on the bags are really important. So that the ball isn't coming so unrealistically quickly, the referee's got no time to actually practice what they're supposed to be doing. So that's an important one to watch. And then if somebody's doing it too easily, it's too easy for them. I think Cam brought some red and yellow cards for us. If not, we'll make do something else. But I'm just going to add some extra information for the referee to process, which will be the people on the bags will have. That's why the bag people will be really important. They'll have cards, and every now and then, when they're out on the defensive line side and not on the ruck, they'll hold a colour card up. The ref's got to be able to process what they're doing, and also red. That's a bit like checking the offside, making sure they're actually looking and seeing something. We can use fingers, but it's just a bit harder to see. we'll try with cards. Some there'll be enough on their plate. We found on Wednesday that you just didn't need that extra information. There's too much going on. Some are doing it so easy. Some of the Prem refs have got this pretty well sorted now. We need to add extra information to make it harder for them. And we could get the halfback to be a little bit trickier in what they're doing as well, just to try and catch them out a little bit and give you guys something to give them feedback on. But the way I want that drill to work is pretty much operate as close to continuously as possible. So we'll go all the way up one way with a ref, and then have another ref ready to go. They come in, we'll come back the other way with the other ref while that ref's getting quick feedback from a couple of you guys. The feedback needs to be quick enough so they can be ready to go for the next one up. So we want to pretty much be able to just turn around and go backwards and forwards for a good period within reason, so we can get it working. Because the idea behind it is we want to be able to go execute, or it might go practice over here, execute feedback, or practice feedback, execute feedback, execute. It's that as many of those learning cycles as we can practically do. Bearing in mind we've got quite a few people to get through. So, any questions on that? So I will take more of an active leading role in this one, just because it's complex and I'll probably have to tune it as we go. And that one there, I'll just get Jono can take the lead role in terms of organising who's doing what coaching over here, just so that it's. And if we need to set up another station because it's a bit congested, we can set up another one so we can spread out, and you could have a. You might need that. It might be useful. I'll set that up so we can go. So you guys can spread out, and we can have 4 or 5 refs over here practicing across a couple of stations, getting feedback, and the right number here. Because if we have too many here, this doesn't work. It gets 2, and then you guys around just adding value.